A girl thinking you're insecure is one of the biggest turnoffs out there.
I thought you looked nice. I thought you looked nice.
And I've seen men make all the different mistakes, whether it comes to the beginning of the interaction or when it comes to dating the girl, or even when they're getting into a relationship and they've been seeing the girl for a long term, they're starting to get really excited. There's so many different ways that men display insecurities with women that causes that loss of attraction. So in this video, I want to break down the different levels to the way you may or may not even realize you're being insecure when it comes to dating. And at the end of this video, I want to explain to you guys the timeline and the process you're gonna need to go through to actually heal these insecurities. It's not like you're gonna watch this video and then suddenly you're not insecure anymore. There's actually a process you will need to go through. I've made that transformation. It took me 10 years. I'm 34 years old now, guys, but it doesn't need to take you that long. So first, I'll explain the mistakes men are making, and then at the end of this, I'll give you guys the timeline and the process that you're gonna need to go through to become that secure, confident dude that can create attraction with women. Biggest mistakes I see men making that gives off insecurities is pretty small technicalities around their communication and the way that they're approaching the girl to begin with. And some of the most common ones that are on the front end of the interaction are pretty obvious, like the idea around having weak eye contact or very nervous, soft voice, or dudes that are giving off like fidgety movements and nervous mannerisms. Their body's like shaking and they're pretty much like scared shitless when they're going up and talking to the girl. Any of those things are very obvious indicators that you're insecure and lacking confidence when it comes to starting the interaction. Honestly, guys, I've been there myself. Like when I first started going up and approaching girls, I was the dude who was scared shitless. I had never done an approach before. I was freaking out at the thought of even going up to talk to a girl. So finally, when I did it, which by the way, I was pretty much pushed into the situation. Like I couldn't even go up and approach a girl by myself initially, but I did manage to kind of like crawl my way into those first couple of interactions, and I was extremely nervous. They were pretty much instant rejections, and at least I faced my fear. And eventually, with a little bit of consistency that day, I think I did 5 or 10 approaches in the next like hour or two, I was able to really calm down and get over that initial fear. I think a lot of dudes, when it comes to that front end, very obvious insecurities, they just haven't faced the situation enough. Like that's really what it is. You haven't really approached, you haven't gone out there and faced your fear when it comes to starting interactions. And so the idea of doing any of it is extremely, extremely nerve-wracking. And so those are the most common ones I see on the front end, but there's also some subtle ones that I see during the initial approach as well, because there are dudes that can talk to women, they can start an interaction, they can ask questions, but when it comes to actually displaying intent, for whatever reason, suddenly it becomes a big deal. It's like literally they just have intent anxiety. And so with practice, I was able to get over that initial approach anxiety, but there's still a lot of dudes who can get into conversations with women. Maybe they can even go and approach, or they just have a lot of women that they interact with either in their social circle or their day-to-day life. But for whatever reason, those dudes, they still can't display intent to the girl. They can't still, in a confident way, just look at the girl with like a flirtatious delivery and actually display some level of intent. Let the girl know you're physically attracted to her, you're intrigued, you're curious, you wanted to go up and speak to her and meet her. A lot of dudes can't do that one part. They're insecure around the idea of displaying intent to the girl, and then the girl ends up rejecting them. It's like they're afraid of rejection, but it's not the same as approach anxiety. Approach anxiety, you're just shitting bricks. Like you can't even say hi to the girl in a confident way. One other subtle insecurity I see that a lot of dudes also make too on the front end is they can do a lot of those things, but they can't do it in a crowd of people. Like they can actually go up and approach a girl, or they wait till the girl's alone, but a lot of dudes struggle with the idea of other people around when they're going up and approaching the girl. If you're the dude who can't open properly using these concepts, understand almost automatically the girl's going to assume that you're insecure to some extent. Those are more obvious ones because we're talking about the front end of the interaction. So these are things that people are gonna notice about you very quickly. But let's transition a little bit more into the middle of the interaction, or when it comes to maybe even setting up a date with a girl. There's different insecurities here, because the dude that gets into the interaction, he maybe even starts flirting with the girl, he's carrying the conversation. The next biggest thing I notice what the dude's insecure about is, for whatever reason, when it comes to going for a phone number, asking the girl out, setting up a date, for whatever reason, there's like more pressure around these like check boxes in the interaction. And each one of these check boxes, by the way, they all stem back to the same idea of the unknown of the other person's response. We're not sure if the girl's gonna accept us, if she's gonna respond positively. And so because of these unknowns, we get really in our head, and that actually causes us to deliver the question or the suggestion in a really weak way, right? That's really what it is. As I'm going through these steps, guys, whether it's on the very front end or whether we're talking about the middle of the interaction and kind of leading things forward, it just comes down to the dude is unsure about himself. One thing I notice with a lot of dudes when it comes to night game or even daytime when it goes for like leading for an Insta date, the dude doesn't just lead. With all of these, he doesn't just lead. He's like waiting for the girl to almost not realizing like it's on you to do it in a fun, reassuring, confident way, right? That's why it comes off insecure, is because like if you're not excited about it and you're not confident with it, by default, you're kind of like insecure about it, right? So my biggest piece of advice, if you're in this middle bracket of dudes where like you're getting into interactions, but you're still kind of being a pussy in the middle of the conversation, instead of thinking like, oh, I don't know how she's gonna respond, so I'm gonna kind of like, dance around it, like that's actually hurting you more than you just faking it till you make it. And just kind of act your way into that position for the time being. Give yourself permission that it's okay to go for it in a fun, confident, reassuring way. Even if you're not really feeling that confident in those moments, it's okay to just kind of go for that next step, because that's the only way it's gonna actually be successful. Now let's move on to more of like dating insecurities I see with men, because there's kind of like two different sides to this part of it as well. I've seen dudes that are actually very closed off to the idea of emotion. I've been this dude too. In my 20s, I was this guy. When my first girlfriend ended up leaving me for another dude, and so I really closed off after that and spent the next couple of years going deep into pickup. And pickup was great because cold approach taught me how to build confidence and increase my communication and my vibe and meet people. But the other bad part of it was I was so closed off because I was actually afraid that if I would be open to connecting with another girl, I could potentially be put in that same situation as the dude who got left for another man. And because of that insecurity, I created this wall, dude. Like I dove super deep into being this pickup guy who could get all these girls chasing him. But really, it stemmed from trauma and insecurity. And honestly, this is like way more deep than what we're talking about on the front end. But the further you go into dating and relationships, you'll start to see that it does go deeper and deeper. And so that's one side of the relationship insecurities, is the dude who's so closed off. Maybe it's like stereotypical, like red pill dude, possibly even. But that guy does have a deep level of insecurity, believe it or not. I've also seen the other side of it too, though, where he's not closed off, but he's extremely needy, kind of like over pursuing the girl, or trying to pedestalize the girl, or trying to do whatever he can to try to figure out, does the girl like me as much as I like her? So, I mean, either side of it really does stem from insecurity. I'm sure you have experienced some, if not all, of these different insecurities. I want to talk about how you could actually overcome these, because honestly, dude, there's so much bullshit on YouTube about doing these 3 simple steps, the 3 keys, the easy glitch that you could do to overcome your insecurity. And like the reality is, it's just bullshit. Like I fell for that stuff when I was in my 20s. I spent a decade slowly grinding out a lot of these insecurities to really become a confident dude that's not embarrassed or ashamed or apologetic about the things I've been through. But YouTube and these other gurus will have you think that if you just say this one thing, you just act this one way, or if you just tell the girl this one phrase, you're gonna no longer appear insecure. And really, guys, as a dude who's gone through this for so long, I can truly say the only way to actually get over the insecurities is you gotta go through this shit, man. Every step of that progression I showed you before, whether it was the front end of opening, or when it came to flirting and getting the phone number, or if it was on the back end in the relationship, all of these things really stem from fear of whether or not the other person is going to accept us. And the reason that you can't just fix this with this one cinch bullshit that's going on YouTube and these other platforms is because you actually need to put in the work. You need to face the trauma. You need to face rejection. And as you take that next slightly uncomfortable step, over time, you'll realize that that is okay and people can accept you for that one thing. And then your baseline grows, and that allows you to push it even further. And then you'll see over time that that's not a big deal. And you can slowly build that process. Starts on the front end with the approaching. You'll start taking those first couple steps towards approaching. You'll realize that the rejection isn't a big deal. And then you'll start to get more comfortable interacting with the world. But then you have intent anxiety, and you're not sure if the girl's gonna accept you or not. So you need to slowly start giving out intent as a means of facing that fear and desensitizing yourself. I mean, this process took me 10 years. It doesn't necessarily need to take that long, but understand, guys, like you do need to work your way through this. And I think that's why most dudes don't actually fix this, is because they fall off throughout that journey. There's a lot of steps you need to go through in that whole process to slowly work out all of the insecurities. And again, it doesn't need to take 10 years, but anybody that tells you you can do this with this one simple hack to overcome your insecurity, that's bullshit, man. You gotta put in the uncomfortable action consistently as a dude if you genuinely wanna level up these areas of your life. And obviously, that's why having a community, surrounding yourself with like-minded men, having a mentor or somebody who's been through this that could actually push you through that process, readjust your mindset, your self-talk, make sure you're taking the step properly. That's how you could really fast-track your results. So if you wanna watch me live in the field, demonstrating a lot of these concepts so you could see how it's done properly, or if you're interested in actually working with me directly, surrounding yourself with a community, getting that step-by-step guidance to really fast-track your result so you could overcome your own insecurities, guys, click the button below and check out my brand new coaching program. I have an insane offer going on. You get 1 month risk-free, okay? 30-minute one-on-one call directly with me, daily live coaching call every single day with me, all the content, the entire community's popping. Click the button below, check that out right now. That's all for this video, fellas.